In the fantasy hockey realm, things can get a little bit risky, but you got to make sure you're going to have a high reward at the end of it, which is why on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, it's time for the high risk, high reward fantasy targets we're taking a look at this upcoming season. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are only roughly 3 weeks away from NHL hockey, Mr. Roden, and that means it's time to buckle down and get real serious on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, your daily 30-minute source for all things fantasy hockey. Shout out to the everydayers who continue to hold us down and make us their first listen every single day. Steele, I know I speak for you on this one. We see you. We appreciate you. All of the comments, the DMs, all of the interest in the listener leagues. I promise, stay tuned. We've been teasing it. It's coming, my friends. We will do a draw. Continue to follow, like, subscribe, and today's episode, Steele, high risk, high reward. A lot of outlets in the fantasy game, they do this. I had a look around. I wanted to bring some obvious names to the table, some honorable mentions, and some players that I still see a ton of value in. Before we get to my names, I'm going to turn it over to you. Who are you looking at first? High risk, but potentially high fantasy reward.
Well, let's start off with one of the baddest defensemen in the NHL still. Roman Josi, for me, comes in as a high-risk, high-reward player. I absolutely love having him and drafting him for my team. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, here are his stats from the 2024-25 season. 53 games played, 9 goals, 38 points. And I really like Roman Josi, because of what I already said. He is still one of the most dynamic offensive defenseman in hockey, quarterbacks the power play one unit, racks up a ton of shots with points, and can swing matchups at D compared to some of the replacement level options. And I'm not saying he's going to jump back to what he did 2 seasons ago where he had 85 points, or even 4 years ago where he had 96 points, but 65, 70 points is still in the ballpark for a guy like Roman Josi. He's going to put upwards of over 220 plus shots. He can put upwards of over 150 plus blocks as well, 40 penalty minutes, 50 hits as well. I think if he can stay healthy, and that's where the risk comes in. He's 35 years old. He's played heavy minutes throughout his entire career. The wear and tear with the injuries is a risky situation for Roman Josi. I don't see how Nashville can be any worse than they were last year. I just don't think it's possible. We like UC Saros. We think he's still one of the really good goalies in the league right now.
Sure.
Maybe their blue line it's not what it once was, 4 or 5 years ago, but you still have Jonathan Marchessault, so you still have Steven Stamkos, goal scorers. We talked about Philip Forsberg the other day, drafting him in the second round. Roman Josi, his ADP right now is at 63.7. He's falling somewhere in that 6th, 7th range. I'm jumping all over a guy like Roman Josi at that point in the draft. Obviously some risk, but I think if you draft him and he stays healthy, big reward for your fantasy team moving forward.
And I think the risk also comes in with the angle that we've covered with this club. They really struggled to generate offensive scoring chances on the power play or otherwise. Last year, only the San Jose Sharks scored less goals than them, Steele, meaning the Ducks, Flames, Bruins, Islanders, and other anemic offensive clubs outscored them. 212 total goals for the Nashville Predators. It might be kind of a safe and obvious take. They got to be better than that. And if Roman Josi, even in an injured year and a down year for the club, is still bringing 38 points in 53 games, I think that's all we really need to say with Roman Josi. I do have 2 names, one quite obvious, one very risky that kind of fall into honorable mention. Jonathan Drouin, 37 points in 43 games last year, still has the offensive talent in his hands. Obviously, between the ears or physically, he has been unable to stay in the lineup, never playing a full 82-game season in his career and going to the New York Islanders, even though he looks like he'll slot in on the top line. That comes with a whole boatload of risk, perhaps more than I'm willing to take on. But some GMs, some deeper leagues, a guy on a top line who was basically a point-per-game player last year, That might fit your team's mold. So we're throwing out options for you guys always. Our show is for the experts, the newbies, and everyone in between. So we're always trying to highlight different angles on every single show to make sure that you guys get there. Gabriel Landeskog is kind of another obvious name. The risk is there. We know it. I don't need to explain it. And the high reward is there as well. This is a player who isn't afraid to mix it up. 100+ hits throughout his career in the regular, kind of dipping down over the last 2 seasons. Colorado is good, too risky. Very quickly. Then back to you because I want your take on this, although I'm pretty sure I know how you feel. Stuart Skinner and the Edmonton Oilers, and I think this might be a Stuart Skinner / Calvin Pickard because it's probably going to be a 50-50 split for these guys. This is a powder keg for the Edmonton Oilers. However, I don't think fantasy GM should overlook goaltenders, especially in some formats where you're just those points leagues where you're looking for some wins and maybe a couple of shutouts. Stuart Skinner, to me, still is going to be the number one, quote unquote, loose terms on that number one term, Steele. And look, 26 wins, 18 losses, not too bad. Last year's regular season, 896. And then in the postseason, he looks great. He looks awful. He's the prototypical high risk, high reward, in my opinion, Steele. But let's not forget, he has the Edmonton Oilers in front of him. This is a goaltender who's going to eat at least around 40 games or more, in my opinion. Stuart Skinner, prototypical, high risk, high reward player that, yes, I'm waiting on for sure. But I think I'm okay getting a little risky with him near the back end of drafts. Maybe he's my second or third goalie. I'm going to stop talking over to you because I do think Stuart Skinner fits this mold very nicely.
Yeah, he does. And in every single mock draft I've been a part of so far, before the season started, I've seen Stuart Skinner drop all the way until the last 3 rounds. Like, this is your prototypical 0G goaltender. He's going to put up over 50 games played. He is the number one starter, even though it could be Calvin Pickard in the mix. I just don't like the confidence level of this guy. I don't like the inconsistency of this player. He burned me quite a few times last year on my team, and it just came to a point where I had to drop him. Over the last 3 years, his statistics have slowly dipped in the save percentage and increased in the goals against average. He's still going to put up, again, he's still going to get over 50 games played. He's still going to get close to 30 wins just because of how good Edmonton is. But when you're in a categorical format and your expectations for save percentage and goals against and even win shutouts, he is not one of those goaltenders you really want to depend on. I see the high risk. I see the high reward if he can bounce back. I also don't like his comments about like how he's setting lofty goals this upcoming year and he wants to be on the Olympic team. I'm like, dude, you were just
not
in
happening.
The Stanley Cup Finals for like the last 2 years, and you pooped the bed. So
not happening.
It doesn't make sense to me. There's really good Canadian goaltenders out there. I don't see it happening for him. When we come back after the break, we got more high risk, high reward players to keep an eye out for in your draft. If you can snag them in that perfect range, jump all over these guys. We'll get to it after the break.
Fantasy hockey draft season rapidly approaching, and we cannot wait. However, where we're getting our money in every single night, FanDuel Sportsbook. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season, she's here, baby. And FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with can't-miss offer for new customers that bet $5. And that first $5 wager hits, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Steele and I are all over the same game parlays. We're all over touchdown scorers, futures picks, whatever it is, NFL, we're on it in the FanDuel app. You're ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. To get started, make sure you're heading over to FanDuel.com and place that $5 wager today.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Smash that subscribe button, the follow button. Leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden.
Sure.
And on today's episode with these high-risk, high-reward players, I really wanted to showcase some defensemen I really like. You know, I don't feel like I do a good enough job of highlighting these defensemen in fantasy hockey. We're always talking about some sleeper picks, picking some young guns. We're talking about some veterans. I'm going back to another defenseman, and
I like it.
with what I've talked about over the last month and a half, I need a piece of the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, I really want Jack Eichel. I really want Mitch Marner. I also want Shea Theodore. I love this player. I think he's one of the most underrated defensemen in the league, especially in fantasy hockey. I think he has so much skill, especially offensively, that it goes unnoticed at times. He's an excellent puck-moving defenseman, has the 50-plus point potential when he's healthy. He can quarterback the power play, which is going to be one of my cases going into the season. Now with Alex Pietrangelo in the lineup,
right?
It's his team, in my opinion, for the blue line. You know, there still is the chance, there still is the risk of Noah Hannafin potentially coming in and taking over the power play time, or getting some power play time. But with Shea Theodore being there for the last, 6-7 years of his career now, I think it's his time to shine, especially on the power play. So again, when you look at the graphic, when you look at his stats from last season, 67 games played, 7 goals, 57 points. That's always been the concern and the risk with this player, is he has never been able to stay healthy. He's never played close, or he's never played a full 82 games. The closest to 78 games in 2021, 2022. I really like this Vegas team. So if I can just get at least one piece, whether it's Shea Theodore, Marner, Eichel, Pavel Dorofeyev, I want a piece of this team. It's an absolute gold mine. He's one of the best offensive skaters in the offensive defenseman in the game. His instincts make him a difference maker for me. And like I said, the risk, the long injury history with this player, but with somewhere in that same range where I was talking about with Roman Josi, his ADP is 63.7. He's getting drafted somewhere between the 5th and 7th round. Those are two defensemen that I would love to take in back-to-back picks somewhere in that range, because I'm going to go heavy forward for the first 4 or 5 rounds, and then I'm going to start picking my defensemen.
Yeah, I think that strategy makes a ton of sense. And what you're saying about Shea Theodore also checks out. Shea Theodore comes in ranked at the 17th best D-man on fantasy, NHL.com's top 200. This is right in the chunk of D-men steal. Jacob Chikrin at 15, Dougie Hamilton at 16, Jackson Lacombe at 18, Mikhail Sergachev at 19. I think that's pretty fair to throw Shea Theodore's name right in those mix of very attractive blue liners that
very attractive.
They fall out of those top 2 tiers, but I think they sandwich right into the 3rd tier of blue liners that I agree with your projections. He's one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. You said it. That's the angle and the upside that you go after this player. And let's also be real. Mitch Marner is one player, but this team has already been knocking on the door, and then they get their most decorated, no offense to Jack Eichel. Mitch Marner's been putting up 100-plus point seasons, within the realm or close to triple-digit seasons for a number of years now. This is going to bring an element to this team that they have not had before. They've been very balanced. They've had a whole bunch of unsung heroes. They have a cup. Now they have a really high-end winger to pair with their top middleman. You and I have been talking about
Vegas.
We've been talking about this basically since the cup was lifted, that you got to pay attention to what this might mean. Marner and Eichel, we'll see it play out, but for now, all of the peripheral angles that we're buying into buy into the Vegas Golden Knights. Stuart Skinner won. The risk there is inconsistencies, perhaps a lack of confidence. You mentioned the risk with injury with Shea Theodore. It's that, I think, with Josh Norris as well. He has never played more than 66 games in his career. This is a player that I think, Steele, if you can remember, we did one of those 23 and under young guns really early on when you and I were doing this together.
A couple years ago.
Thank you. And after 17 goals, 18 assists in 56 games, then followed up by 35 goals in 66 games, a lot of people in the fantasy game, including your boy, were really high on this player. He gets banged up. He gets banged up again. He comes back. He's hot and cold. He's now settled in Buffalo with a change of scenery, Steele. And I'm really intrigued for your take on this, because this is not a player that we've spoken about. And I feel at this point in the offseason, we have really covered a lot of these guys over and over again, if the projections hold true. And Josh Norris is not that number 1 center, which I'm fine with. And he is the second-line center playing with guys like Alex Tuch, even Jason Zucker, but should still probably get some time on that top power play in Buffalo. This is a very attractive name for me. That, yes, he doesn't stay healthy. He has not yet. He's only 25 years old. I say give the kid a chance because last year, Steele, 35 points in 56 games still brings a ton of value, 135 hits, and he changed teams. Buffalo, we like for a little bit of bounce back. He's settled now with a new team. I'm going after Josh Norris most definitely. I think there is 60 plus points in this kid's stick, and I don't think that's a stretch. He put up 55 and 66 as a 22-year-old, so why not 60 points this year on a Buffalo team that should be scoring goals at the very least?
Yeah, they will be scoring goals. I don't see him being really a big factor for them. This is an unattractive pick for me, and this is not a guy that to me, this is not a guy that's draftable. I mean, this is a guy that you're picking up off the waiver wire in a very good streaming schedule, a very good streaming week, advantageous schedule for the Buffalo Sabres if they got 4 games that week. He doesn't even have an ADP in these mock drafts. He doesn't have an ADP. He's not getting drafted. I mean, I just think, we talk about injury history. I mean, this guy, he's injured every single year. And even, again, his career high, 55 points in 66 games. Other than that, he has been a perennial 35-point guy because he can't stay healthy. It's around the same with Patrick Laine. Like that guy he put up 40 goals one year and he had a really good season in Winnipeg, but he was a point per game player with the Columbus Blue Jackets, but he's injured every single season. So I would rather draft a guy like Jason Zucker over Josh Norris, in my opinion. I mean, that guy fills out peripherals. He's reliable. He's consistent. He gets the banger league, somewhat. I would draft a guy, Patrick Laine, over Josh Norris. I mean, to me, that is an unattractive pick.
Food for thought.
I'm staying as far away from Josh Norris as possible.
Food for thought. Jason Zucker ranked 289th on Matt Larkin's. Josh Norris, 142nd. So I hear your take.
Couldn't care less where he's ranked on Matt Larkin's list. Jason Zucker is reliable. He's consistent. He's durable. And again, like Josh Norris to me is just, that's going to be a detrimental pick to your fantasy team if you draft him. Like he's on the waiver wire for me.
Sure, that's fair. I totally disagree. There is so much upside with this player and this team this year. However, who's your next player? We'll agree to disagree, and I can't wait to prove you wrong this year. Who are you looking at next?
I will get to my next player after the break. This is going to be funny for you as well.
I already disagree.
This episode is also brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need the right hire. Like yesterday, the pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly why when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy, they make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, hit the follow button, share with your friends and family out there. We appreciate so much all that love and support. The subscriptions have been popping off. The comments on the YouTube channel, the DMs. And remember, DM us if you want to be a part of our fantasy hockey listener leagues, casual or competitive. We have so many listeners already intrigued and interested. The list is overflowing on my phone. With that being said, let's get to the next high risk, high reward player of mine. And, maybe this guy falls more into a sleeper description. However, there is obviously high risk with this guy because of injuries, but I think we can't forget about Evander Kane. I mean, obviously didn't play the entire season last year with the Edmonton Oilers. He's dealt with significant lower body injuries, wrist injuries. However, he comes back after not playing the full season and puts up 12 points in 21 games in the postseason, 44 penalty minutes, 95 hits, 47 shots. When I look at Evander Kane and him now being in Vancouver, In my honest opinion, I'm looking at their entire lineup, and he is probably the third best forward on their team. It's probably Elias Pettersson, then Brock Besser, and then Evander Kane. I really don't see a way, as well as how Evander Kane doesn't slot in to the first power play unit. Like, as of right now, he's projected on the second, with Philip Hedl taking over that slot position on the first power play unit. I don't see how you don't put Evander Kane. You want one of those guys in front of the net, banging away. He's got great hand-eye coordination. And again, when we talk about banger leagues, like, he's perfect for Art's type of formats. Multi-cap monster, when locked in, when healthy. He can put up 45, 50 points. He's going to get a ton of penalty minutes, which he's done over the years. He put up 250 hits in the 2023-24 season, 44 points, 220 goals. So obviously some risk with this player when it comes to his durability, the wrist and lower body injuries. Like I mentioned, he can be a streaky scorer. However, now playing in the top six in Vancouver, I believe he will be depended on a lot. So I like him in the mix here. Again, I'm sort of trying to stay away from Vancouver players, but if I had to go with one in the later rounds, rounds 15 through 18, Evander Kane is right there at the top of my list.
And this is an excellent segue into me talking about Petey in a second, but you said it, 250 hits right there makes him, you got to pay attention to see what else he's able to chip in with. And he has been banged up for sure, and he plays a very rugged edge. So this is the perfect kind of situation of highlighting the risk and then highlighting what could come with the reward. And yes, the Vancouver Canucks, I think you and I come into some seasons and we like to throw enigma team, hard to predict, hard to put a finger on what they do in the standings per se. Maybe you're stronger on your opinion of they're not making the playoffs. I think I'm a little bit more sold on they're a bubble team. However, I think you'd agree they're not going to be a dynamo. And then that makes buying into these players, especially one in Elias Pettersson, who this is a tough sell. Of course, we've seen this guy skate around and do basically nothing on the ice. Literally, not me getting at him, if you know what I'm saying, Steele. The guys looked checkedout.com. So when you see 77 blocks and 74 hits and 45 points in 64 games, and he looked that lackluster on the ice, and then you look back at 89 points and 102 over the previous 2 years, and all the distractions and all the things I want to continue to sell you on, what I will say is, just like we disagreed before, and I'm going to be going after a player in Josh Norris. I think he's draftable. I know Elias Pettersson is not Josh Norris, but I'm going to be going after him. I think that there's a bounce back here. I think this Vancouver team, if, another big if, a lot of risks and ifs here, Thatcher Demko stays healthy, that's going to translate into a lot more value for their forward group if they can count on Demko in the cage. Is that going to happen? I don't know. But what is going to happen is Petey's going to return to at least 60-plus points. I know you and I have been going back on this point total. So we're going to have to nail something down and actually get that bet in the books. I know it'll be higher than 60. I think you're going to count on him for at least that, making him high risk and definitely high reward. But what goes on with the Canucks is a whole different story.
Yeah, it really is. And the way I view the Vancouver Canucks, I just think so many things have to go perfect for them. Like, Elias Pettersson has to be the offensive leader, taking over positions in the offensive zone. Thatcher Demko needs to stay healthy and get back into peak form from four years ago. That was what Besser needs to have a really good goal scoring season as well. Kiefer Sherwood almost has to repeat what he did last year. Jake DeBrusk really needs to take that step forward as well. Again, like I mentioned, I'm mostly staying away from Vancouver. I don't see them making the playoffs because I really like Utah. I really like Utah's team going into the season. I still think St. Louis, while there may be a question mark, Jordan Binnington can really, if he can get that streak going like we saw last year, he can take them over the top. In a full season with Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek, the Minnesota Wild are right there as well. Too many good teams in the Western Conference. I don't see it this year for Vancouver. I like the potential bounce back of Elias Pettersson. I would have to put his point total, again, in a full or close to a full 82 games played. I'm seeing him somewhere between 70, 75 points. I don't see him cracking 80. I just don't think the team is really good enough for him to get there. I just don't think he's that good enough to get there himself because of, what we talked about in between the ears what's going on upstairs for this player. Why is he not invested? Why is he not, showing some determination and some teamwork with his guys in the locker room and on the ice? It doesn't make sense. Sometimes it just doesn't look like he wants to be there. We saw that happen consistently last year in Vancouver.
Let's see what happens. I throw out PD because not only do we like to stick on our guns to work.
No, it's a good person for high risk, high reward.
Totally agree. And at the end of the day, there has been a lot of off-ice distractions from dumpster fire media sessions to obviously the JT Miller thing, Rick Tocchet in and out. Hey, hope is eternal, spring's eternal, whatever it is, Steele. New season, let's get after it.
We are indeed getting after it. Make sure you're staying tuned in all week long. We got more sleeper picks for you. We're going to get to our bold predictions, of course. Yes. NHL awards, preseason awards. We're going to start throwing out our predictions for those as well. And, of course, Monday mock drafts leading up to the start of the fantasy hockey season. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL Podcast. Because there is no off season, we bring you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On at NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow.
Go Bills.